In rap music, 808s are essential to add punch and power to the mix, but how do you give more punch to these 808s? What are the things you can do to add that extra energy? I give you all the best techniques today in this video. Before we start this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you'll be the first one to know every time I release a new video here on YouTube. And last thing before we dive into the topic of the day, keep in mind that you don't always have to process your 808s. If they sound good, they sound good. Don't fall into the trap of over-processing, because sometimes it can literally kill your sound. So don't take this information as something that works every time, because sometimes it's just not necessary. Okay, enough for the intro, let's get started. First, you have to choose the right sample. You can be the best producer or mixing engineer in the world. A bad sample will always be a bad sample, even if the rest of the mix is good. But how do you choose the right sample? You should actually focus on three things. The first one is the sustain, so how long the sample is. Keep in mind that shorter sustain times are more suitable for a fast tempo and longer sustain times for
slower tempo.
2, color and character. Let's take 2 808s as example. This is the first one, and this is the second one. Exactly the same length, but not the same color at all. It shows us that each 808 is unique. And finally, the attack of the 808. Sometimes it's better to choose an 808 with a slower attack to let the punch of the kick take the lead, but you might also need to enhance the attack of the kick with your 808. My best advice is to try different 808s and see what's best. I know it takes a lot of time, but you'll see that you'll get faster and more efficient with time. In this case, I chose an 808 that sounds like this. Okay, now that you found the right 808 sample, it's time to add an essential processing to add more punch to the 808. Saturation. Adding saturation will do several things. First, a harmonic richness put forward, and thus an 808 that blends more easily in the mix. Secondly, an attack enhanced by the addition of saturation, which means more punch. And finally, a slight compression will be felt, and compression always means more warmth and power. Sometimes you need a lot of saturation, sometimes you just need a tiny touch to make it sound amazing, but whatever the situation, I think it's always cool to add saturation quickly with like a simplistic plugin like Saturation Knob from Softube, for example, so you know whether or not it can work in the mix. For more complex processing, I often choose Decapitator. That plugin is amazing. All you have to do is to adjust the drive knob to set the amount of harmonics you want to add, adjust the tone knob to focus either on the low end range or on the mid range, and finally adjust the mix knob to set the balance between the dry and saturated signal.
Easy!
Here's an 808 without any process. And here's the same one with a touch of Decapitator. Number 3, compression. The primary purpose of a compressor is to reduce the dynamics, but very often the real purpose is character. This is what we look for when compressing an 808. But how to use it and which parameters to choose? In general, a slow attack and a fast release are to be preferred. So we will end up with this kind of values. An attack time from 50 to 100 milliseconds. For the release time, you should target between 20 and 30 milliseconds, a ratio not too high to avoid overcompression, so between 2 and 3 to 1. And finally, the threshold value always depends on the input gain of the source, but you shouldn't go over a gain reduction of 3 to 4 dB. Also, don't forget to adjust the makeup gain accordingly. Here's the 808 without compression. And here's with. For the plugins, I really love MV2 from Waves, because MV2 works with downward compression, which produces amazing results with 808s, and the LA2A emulation from UAD, because this plugin adds a nice touch in the mid-range. Okay, number 4, use an EQ. Sometimes you'll need to cut or boost sudden frequency range to get the best results. For example, a lot of 808 samples of the market have a slight excess in the frequency range between 100 and 150 Hz, and it can quickly prevent the kick from delivering its full power. So by cleaning this range, you help the kick have a little more room to express itself in the mix. In terms of boosting, what can sometimes be very interesting to do is to boost the frequency range between 3 and 5 kHz. It can help the 808 to fit better into the mix. This will bring out the color of the distortion without changing the balance between direct and distorted signal. Very efficient. And the last thing you can do to enhance the punch of your 808s is simply to clean up conflicting sources. It happens so often that all the elements of the mix sound good and well balanced, but the low end range is completely screwed up just because 2 or more sources are in frequency conflict, or they just don't fit together. But why is this more likely to happen in the low end range? In this range, the waveforms are much more likely to enter in phase opposition and thus cancel each other out. This can kill low frequencies. So if something sounds weird in the low end of your mix, think about these two things: phase distortion and frequency cleaning. This is something you can quickly miss, but it is very important to avoid having a muddy and inaccurate sounding mix. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe if you want to know more about pop and hip-hop mixing, and drop your like if you enjoyed watching this video. If you have any questions about this topic, put them in the comments. I'm always happy to answer them. See you next week. Bye.